Hello and welcome to Quiz Class. I'm your host, Ellen, and today we have 100 questions that will interest the boomers. So let's begin with question number 1. Which U.S. government office controlled reporting content to prevent sensitive information leaks during World War II? The Office of Censorship, the Office of News, or the Office of Intelligence? The Office of Censorship. Which 1964 Museum of Modern Art exhibition popularized op art in New York City? The responsive eye, the responsive heart, or the responsive hand? The responsive eye. What delayed the initial reports of the Pearl Harbor attack? Communication delays, equipment failures, or misinformation? Communication delays. Who won the Match of the Century horse race in 1940? Wistful, Seabiscuit, or Vagrancy? Seabiscuit. Which industries did the 1941 AFL pledges protect from wartime strikes? All industries, defense-related industry plants, or pharmaceutical industry? Defense-related industry plants. Which Bing Crosby song became the best-selling single of the 20th century? Pennies from Heaven, White Christmas, or Swinging on a Star? White Christmas. What 1948 talent show introduced many entertainers who became famous? Albie Gould's Talent Scouts, August Gould's Talent Scouts, or Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts? Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts. What term described the press as a powerful institution in democratic society during the 1940s? Third, fourth, or fifth estate? The fourth estate. What building did artist Kenzo Tange incorporate modernist principles in post-World War II Japan? Kurashiki City Hall, rebuilding of Tokyo, or Hiroshima's Peace Memorial Park? Hiroshima's Peace Memorial Park. What 1947 conference promoted urban planning with functional zoning and green spaces? The Rio Conference, the Havana Conference, or the Lima Conference? The Rio Conference. Which 1949 hurricane led to improvements in hurricane tracking? Hurricane King, Hurricane Duke, or Hurricane Prince? Hurricane King. Which 1949 film features an iconic zither score by Anton Karas? The First Man, The Second Man, or The Third Man? The Third Man. What popular children's toy was invented after a failed 1943 rubber substitute invention? Silly putty, Play-Doh, or slime? Silly putty. Which newspaper launched a Red Scare campaign in 1949? Dow Jones and Company, Hearst Newspapers, or the New York Times Company? Hearst Newspapers. What wasn't a contributing factor to the near extinction of bald eagles in the 1940s? Predators, hunting, or DDT? Predators. What futuristic building in LAX was first conceived in the 1940s? Theme Building, Capitol Records Building, or Chemosphere? Theme Building. Which artist used his 1940s paintings and murals to highlight U.S. labor struggles? Jean Charlotte, Lee Friedlander, or Ben Shahn? Ben Shahn. Why was the ending of Alfred Hitchcock's 1941 film Suspicion changed? To make Cary Grant's character more patriotic, more philanthropic, or more sympathetic? More sympathetic. Which African American newspaper was influential in promoting the Great Migration during the 40s? The Detroit Defender, the Chicago Defender, or the St. Paul Defender? The Chicago Defender. For question 20, which famous World War II war dog performed 150 combat missions? Smokey, Bluey, or Willie? Smokey, the Yorkshire Terrier. Which company became the first national U.S. brand of potato chips in the 1950s? Utz, Lay's, or Hers? Lay's. What 1955 conference promoted anti-colonialism during the Cold War? The Bintang Conference, Bandung Conference, or Biltong Conference? The Bandung Conference. Which soda brand had the 1950s Generation campaign? Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, or Pepsi-Cola? Pepsi-Cola. Which 1956 event led to one of the first major Cold War refugee crises? The Hungarian Revolution, the Polish Revolution, or the Czech Revolution? The Hungarian Revolution. Which company released the first transistor radio in 1955? Siemens, Sony, or Sanyo? Sony. Which 1950 expedition did Thor Heyerdahl gain fame for? Kantico, Kontiki, or Skintika? Kontiki. Which prize was awarded to Lester B. Pearson in 1957 for his role in the Suez Crisis? Calgary Peace Prize, World Peace Prize, or the Nobel Peace Prize? The Nobel Peace Prize. What did the film Rashomon introduce to Western audiences when it won the 1950 Venice Film Festival Golden Lion? Turkish cinema, Japanese cinema, or Russian cinema? Japanese cinema. What 1958 New York City building epitomized the international style with bronze-tinted glass? The Lever House, Seagram Building, or Woolworth Building? The Seagram Building. Which 1950s festival became a major tourism draw in New Orleans? Day of the Dead, Mardi Gras, or Bastille Day? Mardi Gras. We are at question 31. What historic event culminated in 1959 with the rise of Fidel Castro? The Cuban Revolution, the Cuban Reconquista, or the Cuban Civil War? The Cuban Revolution. What 1957 event marked the start of the space race? USSR launch of Sputnik 1, Yuri Gagarin orbiting Earth, or Laika the dog going to space? USSR launch of Sputnik 1. What advancement in the 1950s made beer more portable for picnics? Aluminum cans, launch of coolers, or car air conditioning? Aluminum cans. Which language became official in Israel in 1948? Yiddish, Hebrew, or Aramaic? Hebrew. What species went extinct in 1952, though unconfirmed sightings persist? Tasmanian tiger, Tasmanian otter, or the Tasmanian badger? Tasmanian tiger. What mythologist's 1949 book influenced storytelling in the 50s? Aniela Jaffe, Carl Jung, or Joseph Campbell? Joseph Campbell. What processed cheese spread was introduced by Kraft in 1953? Cheese Y or Cheesy, Cheese Whiz or Cheez-Its? Cheese whiz. Which drug became widely used in the 50s to treat rheumatoid arthritis? Botox, methamphetamine, or cortisone? Cortisone. What jazz festival, first held in 1954, became a cornerstone of live jazz performances? Newport Jazz Festival, Monterey Jazz Festival, or San Jose Jazz Festival? Newport Jazz Festival. Which rock and roll hairstyle influenced men's grooming trends in the 1950s? Mohawk, pompadour, or buzz cut? Pompadour. What event in the 60s accelerated the British Empire's decline? The rise of Israel, decolonization in Africa, or the death of Winston Churchill? The decolonization in Africa. Which 1962 storm caused widespread flooding on the U.S. East Coast? The Ash Wednesday storm, the Palm Sunday storm, or the Easter Monday storm? The Ash Wednesday storm. What genre was Stanley Kubrick's 1964 film Dr. Strangelove originally intended to be? Drama, romance, or comedy? Drama. What type of stars did the 1967 discovery of pulsars provide evidence for? Pulsar stars, neutron stars, or black stars? Neutron stars. What 1960s British car became known for its compact size and front-wheel drive design? The MG MGC, Triumph Herald, or Mini Cooper? Mini Cooper. Which Scotch brand rose in popularity in the 60s due to prominent placement in James Bond films? Johnny Walker, Glen Grant, or J&B Scotch? J&B Scotch. Which radio station, launched in 1967, responded to the popularity of pirate radio? Capital London, BBC Radio, or Virgin Radio UK? BBC Radio 1. What event introduced reforms like vernacular languages in mass in the 1960s? The Second Rome Council, the Second Vatican Council, or the Second Basilica Council? The Second Vatican Council. What material featured prominently in the brutalist architectural style of the 60s? Wood, concrete, or tile? concrete? We are at question 50. What spirituality movement gained traction in the West in the 1960s? Atheism, Eastern spirituality, or objectivism? Eastern spirituality. Which 1960 novel won the 1961 Pulitzer Prize? The Edge of Sadness, The River's a Reminiscence, or To Kill a Mockingbird? To Kill a Mockingbird. What was the first Latin American Summer Olympics host city in 1968? Sao Paulo, Mexico City, or Santiago? Mexico City. Which French president survived assassination attempts in the 60s by the OAS? Georges Pompidou, Charles de Gaulle, or Valéry Giscard d'Estaing? Charles de Gaulle. What was the full name of Malcolm X's 1964 speech, The Ballot or the Bulls, the Bullet, or the Bullion? The Bullet. What strain of the measles virus was transformed into the 1963 vaccine? Enders B, Edmundston B, or Edmund B? Edmundston B. Which 1964 earthquake was the most powerful ever recorded in North America? The Great Hawaii Earthquake, the Great Alaska Earthquake, or the Great Washington Earthquake? The Great Alaska Earthquake. What was one of the oversized art sculptures Claes Oldenburg began creating in the 1960s? A balloon dog, a giant soft hamburger, or 1,000 years? Giant soft hamburger. What onion-flavored corn snack was introduced by Frito-Lay in 1969? Funyuns, French onion soup, or Onions? Funyuns. Which journalist popularized new journalism in the 60s? Richard Branson, Tom Wolfe, or Don Short? Tom Wolfe. We are at question 60. In which 1976 speech did Margaret Thatcher say, "I stand before you tonight in my Red Star chiffon evening gown"? Red Star speech, the Iron Lady speech, or the First Lady speech? The Iron Lady speech. Which NFL team won their first Super Bowl in 1975, sparking a decade of dominance? Pittsburgh Steelers, Philadelphia Eagles, or New England Patriots? The Pittsburgh Steelers. Which 1977 television miniseries brought the realities of slavery to screens across the U.S.? Roots, Railroads, or Rocks? Roots. What pattern were the 1970s pants popular with punks? Tartan, stripe, or paisley? Tartan. Which language became dominant in scientific publications in the 70s, replacing German and French? English, Spanish, or Mandarin? English. Which company released the 1976 arcade game Seawolf? Midway, Sega, or Atari? Midway. Where was the devastating 1972 Managua earthquake? Panama, Nicaragua, or Costa Rica? Nicaragua. What anniversary did Cheez-It celebrate in 1971? 30th, 40th, or 50th? The 50th. Which UK festival, launched in 1970, grew into one of the largest and most famous music festivals? All Points East, Glastonbury, or Edinburgh Festival Fringe? Glastonbury. What was the 1974 polysaccharide vaccine for? Mumps, meningitis, or infectious mononucleosis? Meningitis. We are at question 70. What 1976 film directed by Martin Scorsese won the Palme d'Or at Cannes? Raging Bull, New York, New York, or Taxi Driver? Taxi Driver. Which American subcompact car introduced in 1970 was often mocked for its design? The AMC Goblin, Gremlin, or Gargoyle? The AMC Gremlin. Which island was granted home rule by Denmark in 1979, marking a key moment in its political autonomy? Greenland, Svalbard, or Faroe Islands? Greenland. What was the late 1970s New York graffiti artist Jean-Michel Basquiat known as? Samo, Simo, or Sumo? Samo. What cocktail was associated, with the Rolling Stones during their 1972 tour? Tequila Sunrise, Pina Colada, or Old Fashioned? Tequila Sunrise. What was the ISKCON movement that rapidly expanded in the 70s? The Divine Light Mission, the Hare Krishna movement, or the Self-Realization Fellowship? The Hare Krishna movement. Where did Operation Frequent Wind occur in 1975? Phnom Penh, Saigon, or Vientiane? Saigon. Which space program announced in 1972 aimed to create reusable spacecraft? The Space Shuttle Program, the Space Refuse Program, or the Space Environmentalism Program? The Space Shuttle Program. What trilogy was the J.G. Farrell novel, The Seas of Krishnapur, from that won the 1973 Booker Prize? Crown Trilogy, Empire Trilogy, or Colossus Trilogy? Empire Trilogy. Which country did not experience civil war following the fall of the Portuguese Empire in the 70s? Angola, Cape Verde, or Mozambique? Cape Verde. We heard question 80. What men's fashion symbol from the 70s was known for its polyester material and gold patterns? Safari suit, leisure suit, or sweatsuit? The leisure suit. Where was the 1978 Jonestown Massacre? Jamaica, Guyana, or Belize? Guyana. What mini powdered donut snack became popular in the 70s? Tim Hortons, Dunkin' Donut, or Hostess Donuts? Hostess Donuts. What perfume, launched in 1977, was controversial yet widely popular in the 80s? Nina Ricci L'air du Temps, Yves Saint Laurent Opium, or Pascherelle Année Année? Yves Saint Laurent Opium. What culture began in the 70s before becoming a dominant force in music, fashion, and activism by the 80s? Hip-hop, folk, or punk? Hip-hop. Where was a points-based immigration system implemented in the 80s that reshaped the demographic landscape? Canada, the UK, or Australia? Canada. Who designed Princess Diana's wedding dress for her 1981 marriage to Prince Charles? David and Elizabeth Manuel, David and Elizabeth Everton, or David and Elizabeth Ellingsworth? And the first one is the answer, David and Elizabeth Emanuel. Which musician won his first Grammy Award in 1980 for Slow Train Coming? Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen or John Bon Jovi? Bob Dylan. What record did Reinhold Messner achieve in his 1980 summit of Mount Everest? First solo climber to summit, first East German climber to summit, or first climber without supplemental oxygen? And the last one is the answer, without supplemental oxygen. What 1985 global concert raised money for famine relief in Ethiopia? Global Now, Live Aid, or Come Together? Live Aid. Question 90. Where did Israeli commandos carry out the 1976 Entebbe raid? Rwanda, Uganda, or Yemen? Uganda. What 1988 prepackaged school lunch revolutionized lunches for children? Lunchables, Munchables, or Brunchables? Lunchables. Question 92. What economic policies led by Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan reshaped the global economy in the 80s? Neoliberalism, late-stage capitalism, or growth economics? Neoliberalism. What African region suffered severe droughts and famine throughout the 80s? Sahel, Maghreb, or Guinea? Sahel. What species was rediscovered in 1981, leading to a successful breeding program to save it from extinction? Black-footed ferret, red-footed ferret, or the blonde-footed ferret? The black-footed ferret. What was George H.W. Bush's promise in the 1988 U.S. presidential election? No big taxes, no new taxes, or no veteran taxes? No new taxes. What did the 1980 bubblegum product Big League Chew resemble? Big Red Gum, chewing tobacco, or saltwater taffy? Chewing tobacco. Which immunosuppressant drug improving organ transplant success became widely used in the 80s? Cyclosporine, prednisone, or azathioprine? Cyclosporine. Which species was officially classified as endangered in the 80s, promoting global conservation efforts? Grizzly bear, giant panda, or the koala? Giant panda. What was the precursor to the 80s Nike Air Force One shoe model? Nike Air Jettison, Nike Air Tailwind, or Nike Air Supersonic? Nike Air Tailwind. And we are at question 100. What country gained independence in 1990, marking one of the last decolonization efforts in Africa? Namibia, Senegal, or Madagascar? Namibia. And we have our bonus question. Where in Ukraine did the world's worst nuclear disaster happen in 1986? Let us know the answer in the comments. Thanks for playing this quiz. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.